Tonight, marking 1 year since a Kamloops First Nation forced a Canadian reckoning with residential schools.
Too many children did not make it home.
With reconciliation in mind, what's been learned and what's next? Also tonight, a Canadian desire for travel hits a new restriction, prices that bite.
$3,000 for me is equal to 5 months of rent.
If we end up being broke, we end up being broke.
And the royal family, a new take from an old hand.
Do you see a possible future where the royal family brings Harry and Meghan back?
Andrew probes, Tina Brown dishes. This is The National. Good evening, I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Andrew is away 1 year after the discovery that sparked a national reckoning. Today, a day of reflection in Kamloops, BC, opening its doors to Canadians. The Kamloops to Secwepemc Nation gathered to honor Lesquequa, the missing children who never made it home. It took place near the site of a former residential school and its 215 suspected unmarked graves. There was song, dance, and prayer, but with the Governor General and Prime Minister in attendance, talk too, how to turn a reckoning into reconciliation. Brady Strachan is in Kamloops tonight with more on how the day unfolded and the difficult decisions that lie ahead.
Through song and dance, just steps away from the site of suspected graves, the community remembered young lives lost.
So we're here today to honor and to reflect this past year, the very first anniversary of the Lesquequa, the missing, the children who did not come home.
For some elders who attended the school, the ceremonies today are a way of healing the trauma they endured.
I remember the nuns pulling up their arms like this and coming down and hitting our back. There was 3 of us. And so I didn't want to be here anymore.
Rose Miller was just 8 years old. She tried to run away along the river to reach her parents.
I got back and got punished. They cut my hair off so short all over. I had long braids. And we had to lie on that little beds that they have in there and on our stomach. And they stripped us down and they strapped us.
She says watching children in regalia, expressing the culture she wasn't allowed to know, is a way forward for her community.
Indigenous leaders here say they too are looking for a way forward. That includes searching for any further remains on the site. There is federal money to support that work, but the harder question for many is what to do with any remains found on the site.
They should be brought back to their communities because this here was the central place for many children from all over BC, maybe even estates in Alberta.
First Nation leaders say that's a decision that will take time and careful consideration.
I think the focus really needs to be on the survivors and their families so that they can have the space and the voice and the healing they need. And then they can come together to make some of these key and important decisions.
The federal government says it's committed to working with the First Nation communities tied to 140 residential schools.
I will pledge to continue being the very best partner I can possibly be.
And while the path to reconciliation may still be unclear, this community hopes its unity may help pave the way. Brady Strachan, CBC News, to Kamloops to Secwepemc First Nation.
Now, Renee Filipponi is also in Kamloops and joins us now. So, Renee, you were there this afternoon when the Prime Minister arrived. How did that play out?
Well, Adrienne, it was definitely an emotionally charged environment when the Prime Minister got here to the Arbor. He was greeted by some elders with hugs and tears, people looking for selfies, but there was also that large, vocal group of people with drums chanting, "Canada is on Indian land. Your constitution is not our constitution." People really wanting the Prime Minister to know they are not happy with him. Now, quickly after that, Chief Casimir took to the microphone behind me, urging respect from the people here, saying this is time for healing. We need to respect the elders, and that any solution moving forward is going to require all levels of governments.
And this memorial is going to continue well past sunset. What's your sense of what else we can all expect?
Well, right now It's a dinner break. Everyone's enjoying some food. And behind closed doors, the Prime Minister is meeting with Indigenous leaders to talk about what those next steps are. And after that, he will join the Chief back on the stage behind me for final remarks as they wrap up this day of remembrance. Adrienne?
All right, Renee, thanks very much. Renee Filipponi in Kamloops. Now, support is available for anyone affected by residential schools. You can access emotional and crisis referral services by calling the 24-hour National Crisis Line. That number is 1-866-925-4419. So let's head east now, where a clearer picture is emerging of just how devastating and deadly the storm was that blew through Ontario and Quebec this weekend. Today, the death toll increased to at least 10. It's been 2 days and tens of thousands of people are still without power. The infrastructure so badly damaged, it could be days yet before it's restored. Deanna Sumanac-Johnson shows us what residents and hydro crews are up against as they try to piece things back together.
On a holiday Monday in Ottawa, little cause for celebration, much for concern. From above, the destruction is clear. Hydro towers crumpled, trees snapped, homes severely damaged. This family has had their kids bathe and eat meals at a friend's house.
Now we don't have any power, no hot water, nothing. So with 4 kids, it's very, very hard.
Help is coming into the province from the United States. Crews from the Toronto area, Kingston and New Brunswick are also in or heading to Ottawa.
The councillors in those areas are telling me this is as bad, if not worse, than what they remember from the tornado back in 2018. And then, of course, going back all the way to 1998 and the ice storm that devastated our city.
In this town northeast of Toronto, a state of emergency continues. Cars and homes still crushed under fallen trees, crews working hard to restore power.
I just want to thank these guys.
After facing criticism for not going to the devastated areas sooner, Ontario's premier arrived today.
It's all hands on deck right now, and we're going to get this cleaned up.
But for many people, the only hands on deck are their own.
This is a big concern.
This couple's home in Oakville, Ontario has looked like this since Saturday. They're trying to reach their insurance company to see if it'll cover the costs of removing the tree from the roof.
So I called the insurance company, no one responds. I sent online the claim, but so far no response yet.
And so the work continues after the long weekend that, for many, did not go as expected.
We say we will pass a long weekend. It's a long weekend, very long.
Deanna Sumanac-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, the long weekend celebrations turned violent last night at a popular beach here in Toronto. 2 men were shot, another was stabbed. 7 police officers were injured. One of them struck directly in the face by a firework. It's believed the gathering was organized on social media. 19 people have been arrested so far. Hundreds of Ukrainians displaced by the Russian invasion are preparing for their first night in Canada. They touched down in Winnipeg today on Ottawa's first charter flight from the region. As Karen Pauls shows us, their long journey ended in a very warm welcome.
Their flight was nearly 2 hours late, finally touching down in Canada, safe.
Hello, welcome to Canada. Go ahead.
As the Ukrainians got off the plane, went through customs and got their luggage, family and friends were waiting. This couple came to pick up his mom and sister who fled Kharkiv.
They had like a very narrow window to flee, so finally they moved and crossed the border to Poland, and they spent there like a month waiting for everything, and now they're coming here. I believe they're calling.
While we were talking, he got a call from his sister on the plane.
So yes, they're landed, waiting for their time to leave the plane. Oh my God. Yeah, we hardly slept, we hardly eat anything, but
until we knew that they're
safely crossed the border.
Soon, people started trickling out of Canada Customs, suitcases in tow, looking a little shocked at the greeting. This family fled Chernihiv in December already, worried about what was on the horizon.
I'm feeling great, a bit exhausted after flight, but it's perfect. I'm happy to be here.
From the airport, they went to the Ukrainian Refugee Reception Center, a one-stop shop for provincial services like health cards and housing. Ottawa is providing up to 14 days of accommodations in a hotel. The Manitoba government says the newcomers can stay as long as it takes to find a place to live.
We'll do whatever we can to help support them through this time. It's difficult enough for them, and that we just don't want them to worry.
Back at international arrivals, finally, the emotional reunion.
Give them a line, make the dinner for them, and just have a good talk.
This is the first of 3 federally chartered flights. The second will go to Montreal on Sunday, the third to Halifax 4 days later. All told, 1,000 people will arrive, but 240,000 Ukrainians have applied to come to Canada. Manitoba hopes Ottawa will send more flights here, promising an open heart and a warm welcome. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The number of people forced to flee conflicts like the war in Ukraine reached an all-time high today. That number has now hit 100 million worldwide. It adds up to more than 1% of the global population and includes refugees and those who are internally displaced. The data was released by the United Nations. Now, as Ukrainians continue to leave their country, Moscow is stepping up its attacks in parts of eastern Ukraine. There's a fresh sign of resistance to the war. A Russian diplomat has resigned in protest, and Ukrainian civilians and forces remain defiant. Briar Stewart is there.
Russian troops didn't make it to Kiev, but the burnt-out shells of a few of their military vehicles did, dragged on to the central square to serve as a symbol.
This is now a reminder that we are strong, and this is what happens to those who come here to invade our land.
But this is also one more reminder of what Ukrainians living and fighting on the front line are going through.
I lost maybe 2 my friend on this war.
Her friends were killed in Mariupol, but Ukrainian soldiers are being targeted across the country. 87 were killed last week at this military training facility during a missile strike.
Every country.
Today, while speaking to business leaders virtually at the Davos Forum, Volodymyr Zelensky called for the world to completely cut off Russia. What should the sanctions be like, he said? Maximal, so that Russia or any other potential aggressor that might want to brutally attack a neighbor would know straight away what the consequences are. He wants to see an oil embargo, blocks against all Russian banks. While some foreign companies are withdrawing from Russia, Zelensky says they all should. Today, a Russian diplomat to the UN resigned his post. In the scathing statement, he said, "Never have I been so ashamed of my country as on February 24th of this year." Even as Russia tries to seize more land in the Donbass, Ukrainian prosecutors are already going after its soldiers. The heinous killings committed in the early days of the invasion. This 21-year-old Russian soldier looked almost childlike as he peered out from the prisoner's box.
Ukraine says it's investigating more than 13,000 war crimes. Zelensky says Russia's apparent treatment of civilians is one of the reasons why it's more difficult to arrange formal negotiations. He says the only Russian official he'll meet with is President Vladimir Putin. And so far, there are no plans for that. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Kiev.
After 15 years in business, Starbucks is leaving Russia. The Seattle-based coffee company is closing 130 cafes and ending shipments of coffee and products to the country. Starbucks says it will continue paying its employees in Russia for 6 months. This is the second major exit of a global American brand. McDonald's announced its intentions last week. Now for some reassuring news about monkeypox, even as more suspected cases were reported today in the UK and Europe. Canada's official numbers remain at 5 cases confirmed in Montreal, plus a couple of dozen suspected cases, including one in Toronto. Chris Brown shows us why globally there is caution, but not fear.
The last thing Britain or anywhere needs is another health scare. But no sooner have the COVID masks come off here then the global medical community is warning of a new threat of monkeypox. The worldwide outbreak of monkeypox infections is so unusual that it's a cause for concern, said Germany's health minister. With lethargy, blisters, and pussy sores, the virus is unpleasant but rarely fatal. Usually found in parts of Africa, what's new is that clusters are turning up in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to another
So, doctors from the World Health Organization took to social media Monday with words of caution.
Transmission is really happening from close physical contact, skin-to-skin contact. So it's quite different than COVID in that sense.
Notably, analysis of the cases reveals several European clusters are within communities of men who have sex with men, suggesting theories of perhaps a super spreader event like a party. Experts say subsequent international travel could then move the virus quickly around the globe.
If one or two people became infected at a mass gathering and then went off to their own countries, they could set up small outbreaks in their countries. So it's feasible, but I'm not pointing an accusatory finger at anyone.
Britain reported 36 new cases Monday for a total of 56, with fewer than 200 confirmed or suspected globally. Worrying, but no reason for overreaction, says this expert.
So we should definitely not be going all out with the alarm meter. We should not be panicking.
Dr. Helen Vimalaratne says unlike COVID, monkeypox is not a new virus, nor does it appear to have mutated.
So the important things here are good surveillance, collecting good data, decent contact tracing.
There is a vaccine if other measures don't halt the spread, but doctors say the greatest harm may be the risk of stigmatizing the gay community, because anyone can get monkeypox. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
Pfizer is one step closer to getting regulatory approval for its COVID vaccine for kids younger than 5. Preliminary data suggests its 3 doses offered strong protection and were well tolerated. Pfizer had initially planned for 2 doses, but discovered they didn't seem strong enough. The company says it plans to submit its new data to U.S. regulators this week. Moderna released similar trial data back in March for its 2-dose vaccine for the littlest of kids. The FDA is expected to review both vaccines on June 15th. Joe Biden's provocative words about China today had some people asking, did he really mean that? It was all about the lengths the U.S. would go to if China got aggressive with Taiwan. Magda Gebrselassie shows us the president did raise the stakes, and that might involve Canada.
Not pulling any punches, President Joe Biden says if China attacks Taiwan, the U.S. will defend it militarily.
Yes, that's the commitment we made.
The White House says Biden's comments don't reflect a change in policy, referring to the 1979 Taiwan Relations Act, by which the U.S. would provide Taiwan with resources to defend itself. But that act doesn't require military intervention. At least one Republican congressman liked what Biden said.
Coming from the president, it's very, very strong. And I think China needs to understand that they can't take this lightly and that we're not going to sit back idly and watch them invade Taiwan.
China reacted quickly and forcefully, saying China deplored and rejected Biden's comments. Its foreign minister called Taiwan part of China and that it wouldn't stand for outside interference. Some Chinese officials believe the U.S. is testing China to see how far it will go, says this expert.
That is dangerous if they actually conclude that, because that could imply that Xi Jinping feels that he's being backed into a corner, that he has to do something to show that China has sovereignty over Taiwan.
Countries should be very active now to tell China, you better be careful.
This former Canadian ambassador to China says recent actions against Russia by the U.S. and others also act as a warning. And the message now to China needs to be,
don't think about invading Taiwan. You have to maintain the status quo. Otherwise, you would be subject to heavy sanctions.
He believes if China does invade, other nations, including Canada, will do their part to support the U.S. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Washington.
While many pandemic restrictions have lifted, your summer travel may have hit a new bump in the road.
$3,000 for me is equal to 5 months of rent.
While Canadians decide what they're willing to pay, the tourism industry braces for a season of sky-high gas prices.
Well, I'm not going to cry on camera.
As the Queen's Platinum Jubilee approaches, journalist Tina Brown on what the future could look like for the royal family.
Do you see a possible future where the royal family brings Harry and Meghan back?
Plus, the women who are breaking barriers in men's pro sports.
I don't have to defend my place in this game, and if they don't know, I can't control that.
We're back in 2.
CBC News, The National, named Canada's best national newscast at the Canadian Screen Awards.
Welcome back. After years of COVID concerns and restrictions, many Canadians are eager to finally travel again. But as Sophia Harris explains, some are now running into a brand new roadblock that has them pausing their plans once again.
After 2 years of lockdowns and travel restrictions, Chanakya Ramdev finally started making plans this spring to visit his parents.
My parents, who are seniors now, have been alone in India.
But Ramdev says his trip is on hold again because airfares to India recently spiked to around $3,000 round trip, a price he can't afford.
$3,000 for me is equal to 5 months of rent. Even though the travel restrictions have been removed, a new restriction has been added, which is a financial restriction.
According to Statistics Canada, airfares are surging, up by 20% in April compared to pre-pandemic prices. This economist blames the hike on increased demand at a time when airlines aren't yet flying at full capacity and soaring oil prices.
Jet fuel prices have risen over 120% compared to this time in 2019.
High prices at the pumps are also putting a damper on travel plans closer to home. The national average price of gas recently topped $2 a liter, a record high. Pre-pandemic, Ted Hilton regularly made the 460-kilometer drive to Michigan to visit family. He wants to resume those trips, but the senior, who lives on a fixed income, says he can't afford the gas bill.
You depend on keeping in touch with friends and relatives, and not everybody lives next door. And not being able to travel and to meet up with them, it does make you feel rather isolated.
Experts predict fuel prices will remain high for some time and could climb even higher. meaning no relief in sight for cash-strapped Canadians with unfulfilled travel plans. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
And it's not just travelers affected by these rising costs. Stephen D'Souza takes us to Niagara Falls, where some in the tourism sector are worried about the impact of sky-high gas prices.
Every time John Kinney fires up one of his jet boats, he feels the double hit from high gas prices.
I'm not going to cry on camera, but boats are notorious fuel consumers.
His other concern, that high gas prices keep tourists at home.
Syracuse, Boston, those one tank away markets, when now it costs a couple $100 to fill up your tank, those people may say, I'm going to stay a little bit closer to home.
A recent survey found 66% of drivers said high gas prices would force them to cancel or limit road trips this summer.
That has a real bad impact on the industry that is hoping to have its first proper summer for 2 years.
The mayor hopes a restriction-free summer can overcome the sting of high gas prices.
I think what's going to happen, people are going to budget this into their vacation to Niagara Falls.
That's what Marie Mbui did.
We've been stuck inside for the past 2 years, right? So this summer I'm going to sacrifice.
But it's not only a drop in Canadian visitors that has businesses here concerned. With so much of their business coming from the U.S., tourism operators say their biggest worry isn't high gas prices, but uncertainty at the border. Americans make up almost 30% of visitors to Niagara Falls, but tourism officials say confusion over rules and requirements like the ArriveCan app are keeping Americans away.
It's just another layer of red tape. It's another reason to not come to Canada, to bypass us.
Back at the Falls, Marie Mbouye says she'll likely spend less on food and attractions, but won't let gas prices slow down her trip.
If we end up being broke, we end up being broke.
An attitude that businesses here hope will help fuel their recovery. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Niagara Falls, Ontario.
And it's not just the summer road trip. In parts of Nova Scotia, they're hoping tourists are ready to set sail. We'll take you to a harbor along the coast ready to welcome back travelers. But first,
does the monarchy survive the 21st century?
Andrew sits down with journalist Tina Brown for a conversation about what's next for the royal family.
Give you a photo. Thank you very much.
Well, that's a royal outing today in London. The Queen was at the Chelsea Flower Show. Since she's been having some trouble walking, she was driven around in a golf cart. This is the latest in a series of appearances helping to ease concerns about her health ahead of next month's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Now, it's been a rough patch for the royal family, including Prince Andrew caught up in scandal and Prince Harry leaving the country. As the Commonwealth prepares to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee, Andrew sat down with Tina Brown to discuss her new book, The Palace Papers, a blunt assessment of this difficult time from a royal family watcher who thinks it will survive it.
Hello and welcome to NewsHour, live from the BBC World.
A spokesman for Prince Andrew today declined to comment after a woman who claims she was brought to the UK as a teenager to have sex with him.
Breaking news that's just coming into us, which is that Prince Andrew has reached a financial settlement with Virginia.
When they opened up to Oprah, Harry and Meghan again hit the reputation of the monarchy hard.
And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? They have been their own worst enemy, it is true. I mean, I don't think limitless scandal and explosions can leave the monarchy intact. It is a dumpster fire, actually. I mean, it's been a pretty rough, well, certainly a very rough 5 years at any rate.
So then can I ask this in as blunt a way as possible? Does the monarchy survive the 21st century?
Well, I do think the monarchy survives, but I don't think it's going to have the same global luster, let's put it that way, that the Queen, with her extraordinary stature and rings of history around her, you know, 14 prime ministers, starting with Winston Churchill. There's no one who can have that kind of luster and radiance, and, you know, and stature, frankly, again, very unlikely. But it'll be a different kind of monarchy, but I believe it will survive.
Tell me if I'm wrong. One portrait that I felt like was being repeatedly painted in the book was one of a royal family writ large that is, for the most part, pretty disconnected from the reality of you and me and people who are watching this interview.
It is disconnected, and the interesting thing about the story, the royal story, and certainly the story that I was telling, was the way themes, you know, reassert themselves again and again. There's the monarchy, the institution, 1,000-year-old white Protestant privilege fortress, as it were, which moves like a glacier. And then there are these human beings who inhabit it, who are like any family. There are, you know, the successes, the failures, the weak ones, the strong ones, the miscreants, the sort of the tension between the institution and these very human, very fallible people who inhabit it. And a lot of what we're going to see is about what these people elect to do as individuals in that constriction of the monarchy.
Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be returning as
So one of the royal family's most popular members, a man for whom, over the years, there's been great sympathy and admiration, now faces a very different future. The way back to royal duty has been closed.
Do you see a possible future where the royal family brings Harry and Meghan back into the fold?
I do see a possibility in Charles's reign. I think that Charles wants Harry back, actually, and I wouldn't be surprised. It's a question of whether pride on both sides can effect a rapprochement. I think they've got to now have a period where there is some calm. Of course, Prince Harry doesn't want that to happen. I mean, he's busy lobbing his grenades from Montecito and is going to publish his own memoir, his own tell-all memoir in the fall, which I think is awaited with a lot of trepidation, frankly, about what's he going to do now to destabilize things just at the moment when, you know, they're going to be like that. There's a real anxiety about that. So it's a question of let's get through the book and then we'll see what happens.
If you were to venture an opinion here, do you think Harry and Meghan made a mistake?
I personally think that they could have accomplished a tremendous amount within the royal family. And that's certainly the way Diana always lived her life. I mean, Diana, after all, there's a lot of comparison with Diana, but Diana actually did stay there for 16 years, and she didn't leave the royal family. She hated it, but she also saw that it was an amazing platform for her to, for her humanitarian causes, and she stayed living in Kensington Palace, after all. She didn't leave Kensington Palace. That was her power base, and she knew it. I think they could have accomplished more while being still hanging on to the platform of, you know, their royal service.
Not quite the welcome they were hoping for. At one of the first places William and Kate were supposed to visit, protests forced the couple to cancel.
This is our land! This is our property!
We're moving on, and we intend to attain in short order our development goals and fulfill our true ambitions, destiny as an independent, developed, prosperous country.
An independent Jamaica.
Awkward moment for William. I think that his feeling would have been actually emotionally sympathetic to it, because I think William, as a modern young Briton, would actually agree with the sentiment. But the role he's playing, it put him in a very awkward spot. But I think really what William, I know what he thinks, is that these kind of Commonwealth tours have to be utterly rethought. In some ways, they haven't changed since the Queen and Prince Philip were going there and standing up in the Land Rover and sort of, you know, making their sort of, you know, looking down gestures, as it were, to the people of those nations. And I think you're not going to see William and Kate doing those kind of tours anymore.
The ceremony is unchanged, but the politics are new. The Queen has seen much in her reign.
A line from your book in which you quote the Queen, who said, "I have to be seen to be believed." And that was a great hint at both the fragility of the monarchy, but also the power of it that you're talking about.
Absolutely. I mean, the Queen has never been in any doubt that she served the British nation. She regards her life as serving the nation. She didn't see herself as, like, ruling the British nation. She knows that she's there essentially at the will of the British people. But I think the monarchy can still be of great national importance and even international importance. And I think there's time enough for William to grow enough to have quite a bit of gravitas, because William has something else. He's Diana's son. And as Diana's son, he will always be first in the nation's hearts.
Can I ask you one more question? Why do you keep coming back to this topic? The royals, the royal family. You've had a fascination with them.
I am fascinated by the royals because it is a quintessential dramatic and fascinating situation to have human beings living in such a gilded cage and in such constrained situations, and yet trying to be human, trying to be normal. That's a very interesting dynamic. There's something just deeply fascinating just about the human predicament these people are in.
Tina Brown, what a joy to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back, men's pro sports aren't just for men anymore.
I don't have to defend my place in this game, and if they don't know, I can't control that.
We'll introduce you to some of the women making big moves in the big leagues next. Welcome back. The fight for equity between men and women in sports has largely been around equal pay for playing, but a more subtle fight has been around access, not to play, but to coach. Men have always had that privilege in women's sport. Lindsay Duncombe shows us some women who've punched through the other way.
This is the stuff of dreams. When Cami Granato was small, she and her hockey-mad brothers joked about winning a lottery so they could buy an NHL team and call the shots.
In my mind, that was like the only end because it seemed like impossible. I just thought, well, it's never going to happen because women don't get hired.
Now they do. Granato is one of 2 female assistant general managers with the Vancouver Canucks, the only 2 women at that level in the league. Granato runs player development and scouting. Emily Castengay handles contracts. No lottery win to get here, just decades of being better than pretty much everyone else, including the men.
I don't have to defend my place in this game, and if they don't know, I can't control that.
More and more men's pro sports leagues are making the calculation women can help them win. There are a dozen female coaches in the NFL, half that in the NBA, a female GM in baseball.
Eyes up, eyes up, eyes up, eyes up.
And this season, the BC Lions hired the first woman to coach in the CFL. It's been a hell of a fight to get here, and for many, it's still a battle.
First medal goes over the head of the captain, Cami Granato.
Canadians may remember Granato as the architect of heartbreak, leading Team USA to gold the first time women's hockey was in the Olympics. Her post-playing career equally impressive.
Granato is the only female analyst in the NHL right now.
An analyst for the LA Kings, a broadcaster, a Hall of Fame inductee, a pro scout for Seattle. Then the call came from the Canucks. As qualified as she is, Granato was surprised.
I just didn't think I was going to see that come so quickly in my lifetime.
But hiring women for the front office was something Jim Rutherford was thinking about a decade ago when he was GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins and winning Stanley Cups.
I always thought, the women, they have a lot to offer. They're smart people, they know the game, and it's only a matter of time.
It's one thing to say that in hockey.
We're gonna go double back, right, left, right, left, right, left.
But here, it's tougher.
I've been dealing with roadblocks as a female in football since the day I stepped on the field. I've had coaches flat out refuse to shake my hand.
Tanya Walter is an assistant defensive coach with the CFL's BC Lions, running rookies through training camp. She is the first woman to coach in the CFL.
There you go. And I know that the expectation is almost higher. It's like if I get in that feeling where it's just like if I do anything wrong, it's going to automatically be jumped on.
Surprisingly, Walter's favorite sport growing up wasn't football, but basketball. On the court, she was told she was too aggressive. And that aggression works well on the football field. She played with the Edmonton Storm of the Western Women's Canadian Football League, then Team Alberta and Canada, winning silver at a Women's World Championship. But still, she faces criticism she's not qualified for this, an entry-level pro position.
You're square, okay? It flips from your hip, okay? So my shoulders should not be moving. A lot of people are like, oh, well, she doesn't have the experience. She didn't play in the CFL, so she shouldn't be coaching the CFL. She doesn't understand it. She's never played football. And it's, we'll first look at what I've actually done before you, say that I don't know what I'm doing. Judge me on the job.
That criticism doesn't come from the players.
She's actually been working me, I ain't gonna lie. These first couple of days, she's been surprising me with the stuff that we've been doing.
She'd had to work harder than men do to achieve the same thing, so I think that says a lot about her.
Surviving adversity might just be what makes Walter good at this.
I come from somewhere where I've had to fight for every opportunity to play. I've had to fight for every opportunity to, be involved.
Granato couldn't agree more.
I absolutely think that if you keep hiring the same minds, you're not going to get growth.
The goal, though, is that someday it won't be remarkable when women earn these jobs. The once impossible will not only be real, but normal. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
There is change underway along the coast of Nova Scotia. Smaller ports that closed to international boaters when the pandemic hit are finally welcoming them back. We'll take you to Lunenburg right after the break.
Back on the track, like we back in the bees. When it's guards in the back, you ain't got enemies. A good look at your back so you balance the chi. Back against the wall, think of the bag is some cheese. This for the moms, and be praying on their knees. And they fight for the kids, so we praise them, please. Born to succeed, get before we deceive.
I'm Jamie Poisson, and tomorrow on CBC's Daily News podcast, Front Burner, we hear about the massive oil and gas deposits that, if fully exploited, could blow the world past its climate emissions targets. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Just in time for this long weekend, the Canada Border Services Agency has reopened more than 300 small harbors to international boats. A dozen of them are along the Nova Scotia coast, where Shayna Luck found the locals eager to greet the arrivals.
Lunenburg is getting ready for the big influx of tourists. The historic port closed to international boaters when the pandemic hit. Now they're finally coming back.
Lunenburg is a tough place to drive to. We're right out on the end of the road, but if you're on a boat, it's on the way to everywhere.
Paul Baskett employs 7 people at his boat works shop and typically does more than $1 million of business every year.
We have boats from Europe, boats from the United States. A lot of people cruise to Greenland and Newfoundland, and they come up from the Caribbean.
That all stopped in 2020 when the Canada Border Services Agency suspended service in the town.
You know, we were almost mothballed for a while because of it, but so was everybody else.
Before the pandemic, boaters entering Canada could do their paperwork here, but with small ports along the south shore of Nova Scotia closed, they had to travel to larger ports like Halifax, sometimes adding a day's worth of travel for small boats. About 20% of the business in this sail repair shop comes from the Northeast United States.
May is the month when people move their boats.
And the reopening of small ports could attract tourists in other parts of the country. McMillan is ready for them to arrive.
All the Great Lakes, you know, there's little places where Americans transit and go to and from Canada because same reason, looking for cruising, looking for, you know, a little more pristine, you know, get away from the big cities.
A few hours' drive from Lunenburg, some Americans are already arriving. This is the first ferry from Maine in 3 years. Tourism operators are hoping those visitors will spread throughout the province and spend some money while they're here. Lunenburg is just one of more than 300 border services sites reopening across the country. About 50 are in Atlantic Canada and the West. Most of the rest are in Ontario. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Lunenburg.
A 14-year-old Yukoner made hockey history for the territory.
Everyone was very proud. It was a really cool moment.
Yeah, it was a cool moment, and it's ours after this.
My dad
Keep
loves you. He's
going.
got a big man crush on Ben Hebert.
Good parents.
That's what I like about boxing is the fluidity and the being able to like do pretty things.
Okay, in there somewhere is Gavin McKenna, the 14-year-old from Whitehorse, who just made hockey history. He was selected first overall in the Western Hockey League draft by the Medicine Hat Tigers. So he is the very first Yukoner to be picked first in the WHL draft. That monumental moment for the young player and the territory is our moment.
It was awesome. I was at the rink with my team. Lots of my teammates were there, so they got excited for me, and everyone was very proud. It was a really cool moment.
Gavin's been kind of ranked as the #1 in Western Canada for quite some time, so we were always hoping that it would all pan out.
He loved it right from the very beginning. He always had to have a puck or a stick in his hand. He was just started skating at 2, and Gavin was competitive right from the very beginning. His grandpa would tease him and say, like, you need to get rid of that and try and catch me. And sure enough, off he went trying to chase his grandpa, and the rest is history.
We're super proud of him. All of his hard work over the years starting to pay off.
It was awesome. Didn't feel real for a bit there. It's kind of set in now, but very exciting day.
Yeah, no kidding. Good for you. Did you see how fast he was as a little guy there? Gavin doesn't turn 15 until December, his big dream, the NHL. We have all the faith in the world he'll get there. That is the National for May 23rd. Good night.